Oh my gosh, New Hampshire. He is still awake. Of course you are. Well, thanks so much, everybody. It is great to be with you in this first in the nation primary state. So it is true, folks. You just heard a little intro there, and all roads, right, all roads to 2024 ran through the Roastin' ride, and we had a great time out at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. So, okay, I was going to say it probably surprises some of you that I'm a Harley rider, but you just saw that, right? Okay, who in the room rides? Yes, ma'am. Okay. What? Okay, thank you. I expected more here. You guys have got beautiful fall foliage, you know, motorcyclists out on your beautiful roads. Well, anyway, thank you. Okay, but it really is an honor to be with you here in New Hampshire. We have so many distinguished guests and friends that are here. You are hearing from some of those presidentials, and we are so glad that they are here in New Hampshire. So a little bit about me, folks. First and foremost, I am a mom, and thank you, ladies. We've got our own cheering section right here. And I am soon to be a brand new grandma, my first grandchild. So my daughter and my son-in-law, both of them are lieutenants in our great United States Army. They are expecting a baby boy next year, and I couldn't be more excited. I am also a combat veteran. It was an honor of my life. Thank you. And thanks to all of you as well that have served. It was an honor of my life to proudly serve our great nation for over 23 years in uniform. I successfully led 150 Iowa National Guard troops overseas during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel out of the Iowa Army National Guard. So yes, so all you guardsmen out there as well, thank you so much. I am a daughter of the heartland. So I grew up on a farm in southwest Iowa, and I still live in my home county today. And some of you might remember from my very early ads what we used to do on that farm. So yes, castrating hogs, folks. I know, probably not the most delicate subject, but I am a plain-spoken woman, and I'm going to tell you like it is. So it was there on that farm that my mom and dad taught me the value of hard work, of service, and of sacrifice. And I think most of you probably feel this way too. A little bit of you have gray hair like I do. But the world is vastly different today than the world that I grew up in. And folks, what are we seeing out there? Hardworking parents are struggling to buy gas and groceries. There's an invasion at our southern border. Washington's bureaucracy is bloated and overbearing. And now we have wars being waged in Europe and the Middle East. And folks, so much of what America faces today is due to a lack of right and strong leadership in Washington, D.C. Yeah, oh yeah, I know, you can applaud that. We know there's a lack of leadership. So in our U.S. Army, which is the Army that strengthened me, developed me, leadership is not defined by your rank or by your title. It's about inspiring people, inspiring a group of individuals towards a common goal or objective for the good of the unit or the organization. At 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, however, and frankly, folks, in Congress, there's a void of leadership, a failure to find solutions to the real problems that our folks are facing, and to rein in the unelected bureaucrats who, frankly, are running Washington, D.C. They are making life insufferable for so many Americans. Every time that Washington, D.C. finds a problem, what's their first answer? Money. Throw money at it. Well, this mentality has proven faulty time and time again, and we've got to break out of that cycle. This has led us to the highest inflation in 30 years. It's forcing our families to make tough choices, face those tough choices. And as I travel to all 99 counties in the great state of Iowa, like my senior senator Chuck Grassley does, I hear from folks who have been forced to take on second jobs just to make ends meet. And folks, this is what that catchphrase, Bidenomics, this is what Bidenomics has done to our families across America. So the White House is still trying to convince Americans not to believe their shrinking wallets. It's time for Washington politicians to get outside of the bubble. Get out of it and wake up to the pain and the hardship that's facing our families and our small businesses. We have to rein in their reckless spending. But folks, it's not just the reckless spending that's out there. So there's no denying Washington's administrative state is very unresponsive to the needs of real Americans. The worst part about this is that our federal workers, they're not even showing up to work. How many of you have heard about these bureaucrats that are still at home telecommuting? Okay, I'm not saying telecommuting is a bad thing. I'm just saying if you need to be in the office to get your work done, you need to get yourself into the office to get your work done. So one of the worst examples that I have found is that we have a crisis line for our veterans, right? There are thousands of calls that are going to the VA, veterans that are seeking mental health assistance. The calls are going unanswered because there aren't people there to pick up the phone. They've got to get back to work. And I guess another example I'll share with you, although this one really takes the cake, is bureaucrats that are actually telecommuting, doing conference calls, actually Zoom calls, while taking bubble baths. Yeah, this brilliant guy actually posted the photo on Instagram during his Zoom meeting. Big old hairy legs hanging out of the tub and all. Not the image I was hoping for. Okay, this has got to stop. In his 2022 State of the Union, Biden had pledged that the vast majority of federal workers will once again be working in person. But here we are, nearly 3 years later, and our federal offices in D.C. are still a ghost town. At least 75% of the office space at most of our federal agency headquarters is not being used. 75%. The greatest occupancy rate in Washington, D.C. is 25%? Yes, ma'am. And taxpayers are picking up the cost of maintaining the mostly empty buildings. And I've had enough. And that's why I'm requiring teleworking bureaucrats to show up and investigating how many tax dollars they are abusing. So my investigation would create accountability to adjust bureaucrats' location-based salaries for those that have relocated outside of Washington, D.C. Because right now, those employees that have moved out of D.C. are keeping their higher salaries even though they've moved. And folks, that's taxpayer theft. But there is far more to be done to make Washington accountable to the people it serves. In less than 3 years, the Biden administration has imposed almost $617 billion in regulatory costs on our American businesses. That's 340 billion more than the previous two administrations combined. And who is bearing the brunt of this? The very households, the family farms, and the small businesses that these unelected bureaucrats are bogging down. Allowing those who are not accountable to the voters to make the rules and regulations Americans have to live by has made life worse for our citizens and created policies that are destroying jobs, and this has got to end. And it's going to take the right leadership to end it, just like the crises at our southern border. So how many illegals have crossed into the United States so far under the Biden administration? Oh, that's perfect. Too many. Y'all are right. Okay. Yeah, closer to 8 million. I've got 7 million in my speech. I'll go with either one of those figures because you're probably right. But that's since Joe Biden came into office. And to put that into perspective, folks, if we go with that 7 million figure, that's about 76 times the population of Nashua. 76 times the population of this community. Or 4,593 times the population of Nashua, Iowa. So I've got a Nashua too, and I guarantee you they are not happy about what's going on at the southern border. And Democrats are finally waking up. Have you noticed the calls coming from Democrats now to secure the border? Right? I thought it was secure. Whoa, welcome aboard. Come on to the MAGA movement, folks. Yeah, so they are finally getting on board now that they see polling is strongly in favor of securing our border. For years, I've been calling on this administration to either use or give to the states the materials that were purchased in the previous administration. Because, yeah, thank you, let's finish the border wall. So all of these materials are sitting there in the desert unused. So what is President Biden doing? He is auctioning it off for pennies on the dollar, right? This is ridiculous, selling the border materials instead of finishing the job. You know, but it's not just about the wall, folks. We have an open border, and it's created so many other difficulties when you look at the drug cartels, you look at the sex trafficking, you look at the fentanyl that's coming into our communities. It is flooding into every corner of our society. And it's Iowa, it's New Hampshire, it's everywhere in between. We're not immune to the epidemic. We see it in our communities. And that's why I've been working to hold cartels accountable and make up the difference with our military and our intelligence and sharing that information with the Mexican government. Mexico has got to step up as well, people. And we have to declare fentanyl trafficking a national security threat and put our Pentagon's tools to work. Our military has worked on counter-drug initiatives in the past, and now is the time to get them involved in this fight to save American lives. But none of this can happen without our leaders assuming prudent risk. And folks, it's been clear over the last 2.5 years that this administration doesn't have the guts to do what is right for our country. So, yeah, I'm telling you, it's an absolute disaster. So we've had some events that occurred over the weekend. And I just returned from the Middle East, where I had the unique opportunity to lead a bipartisan delegation to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, and Israel. So we had planned this visit long before the heinous attacks by Iran-backed Hamas, with the goal of strengthening the Abraham Accords and our relationships in the region. Now, once we were there, our goals shifted. It was our delegation's job to ensure our ally, Israel, knows that America is standing shoulder to shoulder with her. But sadly, folks, back in D.C., Biden was too busy hosting a barbecue to address the nation about the Americans who had lost their lives and those that are currently being held hostage as a result of the terror in Israel. It's unconscionable to think that at such a dark and desperate time for America's greatest Middle Eastern ally, and especially after we knew that Americans had been killed, that the president could only muster less than 3 minutes of remarks and answer 0 questions in the press about the attacks on Israel. It's an absolute embarrassment on the world stage, and it's not the first time. Over the course of his administration, Joe Biden has appeased our adversaries like Iran, which is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. And this posture of appeasement risks the lives of Americans and our allies at home and abroad. Iran is never to be trusted, folks. It's a brutal regime, and it should not receive another cent of sanctions relief. And in fact, I'm putting maximum pressure on the Iranians and this administration to keep those sanctions in place and enforceable. But it's not just the lack of sanctions enforcement. It's the fact that the Biden administration has allowed Iran's oil profits to increase, actually, by billions. And this all comes on the heels of Biden's $6 billion transfer to Iran, which undoubtedly allowed the regime to shift money around in the Middle East and fund more terror, primarily to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, I could go on, and create more terror to our friends and allies. This failed posture of appeasement is what allowed Hamas to wreak havoc in Israel, and it's got to end. American lives were lost, more are being held hostage, and America must stand strong with Israel in this fight, and we must not waver. So with chaos around at home, of course with the southern border, we see chaos around the world. Now is the time for true and strong and steadfast American leadership. And the 2024 election is so important. You all understand your role as the first in the nation primary on deciding the future leadership of the United States of America. You play a key role. So folks, the future of the United States is at stake. You cannot sit idly by. So this is a call, and I know you're going to hear this from all of the candidates. You must engage. Your friends must engage. You can't sit on the sidelines and say, I'm not going to voice my opinion. Folks, you have a voice, and you must use it. If you choose to sit this one out, folks, you are going to regret it. Okay, so make that voice heard. And I'm going to close just with a quick story. Okay, so when I was at Iowa State University, this was back before all of you were born, in 1989. Yeah, how many of you were actually born then? Okay, there's a few of us. Nobody in the front row. Okay, well, 1989, I had the privilege of attending an agricultural exchange in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine. So this was the first time I had ever been on an airplane, and I was flying outside of the United States, and my eyes were opened. So the family that I lived with on that small collective farm, again, farming community, They had no running water. They had no refrigerator. They had no car. They had no telephone. You see where I'm going with all this. Yet the first question they asked me, an ag exchange, I thought it would be about, tell us about the crops you raise. Tell us about your livestock. The first question that they asked on this exchange was, what is it like to be an American? And what is it like to be free? Not what I expected, right? It's an ag exchange. So folks, that was a little bit of a wake-up call. That was a lot of culture shock for me as a young woman. We need that shock, and America needs to wake up. We live in the greatest nation on the face of the planet. The people that have to live in these authoritarian regimes all around the globe, they recognize it. When they are exposed to Americans and the American way of life, they want the same liberties and freedoms that we are given in this nation. There are too many people that take it for granted. Do not take this for granted. Because, folks, I've worn the uniform and I've had so many people thank me for my service. And you know what? In response to that, what I say is that you are worth it. You are worth my service. You are worth my daughter's service. You are worth my son-in-law's service. You, sir, your service, our country is worth it. Let's never take it for granted. Your charge out there is to get out, to mobilize, go to those primaries, get out the vote early, bank your vote, bank the vote of your neighbors, and make sure that we get this country back on track. Because, folks, if we lose this country, it's a long way back. Okay? So get out there, bank your vote, make our service worth it. You are worth it. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for taking some time tonight. Bank your vote. Bless these great United States of America. Thanks, everyone. Take it easy.